Welcome to Live the Dream with yours truly, Marty Kaiser. Buckle up and let's get started. Happy Friday, everyone. This is Marty Kaiser with our Friday edition of Real Estate Tidbits. Hope everyone is doing well. Looking forward to a great weekend. We've got a Chamber of Commerce day. It's nice because we had some cold weather, but today anyway is beautiful, so take advantage. I think next week it's probably going to get a little colder. We seem to be having a lot of temperature variations, but we're lucky. I think I was reading that somewhere between 20 and 30 million people in the United States are going to be affected by the weather over the next 3 days. There's going to be a lot of snow and ice throughout, and some areas are going to get a tremendous amount of snow. So we can always be happy that we're in Florida and not in one of these other states. So today I wanted to go over a few things. I'm going to change the order a little bit today, and we'll get our sports information update out of the way first today. Two things on sports. The main thing, of course, is the NFL playoffs. For our football fans, we're down to the final four teams. In the NFC, we've got the Seattle Seahawks against the Los Angeles Rams. Should be a great game. Seattle had the top record in the NFC this year, and so far in the playoffs, they've looked really strong. They've played two close games with the Rams this year. The Rams are headed by their quarterback, Matt Stafford, who is probably will get the Most Valuable Player award, but he's one of the two leading candidates for that. So it should be a great game. Seattle is favored because it's a home game for them, and they've got a tremendous home field advantage. I think if you put a gun to my head and asked me to pick who's going to win, I would give Los Angeles a slight nod in an upset. So we'll see what happens. The other game is the AFC between the Denver Broncos and the New England Patriots. The Patriots have had just a huge turnaround. I think last year they won 3 or 4 games, and they were really a poor team. They got a new coach in Mike Vrabel. Their second-year quarterback, Drake May, is outstanding, and they've really turned it around this year. I think they ended up winning, 13 or 14 games this year. They're playing at Denver, who got the home field advantage because they had the top record along with the tiebreakers. Denver would have been a favorite in this game, but their second-year quarterback, Bo Nix, who has had a very good year, he unfortunately broke his ankle last week, so they're playing their backup quarterback, Jared Stidham. Denver is noted for their defense, so I expect it to be a pretty moderate scoring game, but losing your quarterback and having to play someone who hasn't played in a couple of years is definitely a big disadvantage. So, again, in this game, I would give New England a slight nod. So it should be a really good game, and both games are on Sunday afternoon. The only other sports update was the local team, the Orlando Magic. They're still in kind of an injury-plagued season. Every time it looks like they're going to get their full team back, somebody else gets hurt. And Franz Wagner, one of their stars, injured himself last night. And the Magic had a really bad game. They lost by a lot to a very mediocre team, Charlotte. Part of the Magic's problems this year have been their injuries, and I think part of them, you've got to look at the coaching staff. Even though Jamal Mosley, who is their coach, has a good reputation, he just doesn't seem to be able to fit all these pieces together. The Magic's personnel on paper is definitely better than the way they've been performing. Their defense has definitely taken a big step back this year. And their other star player, Paolo Banchero, has just not developed as rapidly as a number one pick should be. He had a great rookie year, but he's kind of plateaued out. I would say if the Magic can continue on this erratic course throughout the majority of the year, I think they've got to give a lot of thought to whether they're going to replace Coach Mosley or not. So we'll see. I root for them because I'm a hometowner, so I hope they turn it around. So that's all about sports. I did want to mention, I guess, one other thing sports-wise, and this kind of ties into some of the other issues I'm going to mention in how you evaluate things, how you select things from a real estate point of view, how you evaluate what type of home you're going to buy from a real estate broker's point of view, how they evaluate a home and how they're going to price it. And I bring up this evaluation and correlate it to a sports item that's interesting. The NFL this year, the National Football League, they had 10 coaches who were terminated. So basically, 1/3 of their coaches were terminated. Some of the teams seem to terminate coaches like you and I would change socks. They seem to have a new coach every 2 or 3 years. And these guys make a lot of money. You know, they all make 7-figure salaries. Most of the coaches that get terminated usually make, I don't know, somewhere between $4 and $7 million a year. And a lot of them have 1, 2, or 3 years left on their contract. So the owners of these teams, besides terminating these coaches, they eat a lot of money, and it's not inexpensive. So my question is for these owners, and these owners are all multimillionaires and billionaires, and they've been very successful in their business careers. What kind of evaluation processes are they using? They definitely are not using the right evaluation processes because they're having a big error factor. So I just point that out because I know myself when I owned my previous company that I sold, I employed about 50 agents, and I took a lot of pride in my hiring practices, meaning that I just didn't hire people so I could say that I had a bunch of agents. I wanted productive agents that did a quality job for their customers, that were proud to work with my company, and that helped my company enjoy an excellent reputation. At the same time, I wanted to bring people in that I know enjoyed working with us and that made a good living to support their family. So I took it very personally that I wanted to make sure that my agents were successful, number one. And number two, if I lost an agent, whether the agent left because they weren't doing very well financially or if another broker had seemed more attractive to them and they switched their license. Now, real estate by nature, we're all independent contractors, so you can leave one brokerage and go to another one. So there's a lot of turnover in the real estate business, but I always prided myself on keeping my turnover down to a minimum. And I do the same thing in my professional career. After I sold my last real estate company, over the last, it's been, I guess, 20 plus years, I've only worked with 2 companies, so I don't like to switch companies. Sometimes you have to for various reasons, but I try to be loyal to my employer, and at the same time, I don't embrace having to kind of rebrand myself. So when I leave somewhere, it's just because either I got a much better opportunity or I just didn't think my current situation was ideal. So I put a lot of thought and effort into that. At the same time, when I go out on an appointment and visit with a potential new customer, like this morning, for example, I finalized putting a new listing on the market, and the seller and I got along excellently. He was a very thoughtful person as well. I provided him a lot of information, and we were pretty much on the same page in terms of marketing and pricing strategy, what his expectations are, the things that I promised him I would do for him, etc. So I expect his home to hopefully sell pretty rapidly. And while I'm mentioning that, it is a new listing that we're going to put on the market this coming Thursday. It's in the Glenhurst section of Hunters Creek. It's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 1-story home, approximately 2,200 living. Has some nice updates, very nice kitchen. Everything's in excellent shape in the house. It is on water in the back. It does have a very nice screen room in the rear, newer roof, newer air conditioning system. I think it's ideally priced, and that's, between the quality and the care that the house has been maintained, along with its location, the desirability of Hunters Creek, and the improvements it has. I think the price that we're establishing of $499.9 is a tremendous value for folks, and I think it'll sell quickly. So keep that one in mind. It's a new listing in the Glenhurst section of Hunters Creek for $499.9. It'll be on the market Thursday. If you have questions about that home, or you would like just to chat about real estate with me, or get an idea of what your situation may be, whether it's for purchasing or selling, again, this is Marty Kaiser with Better Homes and Gardens. I can be reached at 407-595-9700, or my email address is marty@floridasells.com. Now, along with that, some of the things that I wanted to tie in to my chat are, how long should you expect a home to be on the market? And what determines that exactly? Well, number one, of course, that's a factor of market conditions. So how's the market not only in a particular city, but more importantly, in a particular community? And one of the things that you're seeing in a lot of Orlando communities, even the popular ones, is that market time has increased somewhat. And that's due to a couple factors. Number one, the market's very balanced right now between buyers and sellers. Number two, the prices have pretty much flattened out. And number three, buyers have more selection than they had, a couple years ago. So it puts more emphasis on pricing and staging. And there are some customers, like my customer that I mentioned just now, that's very fair in how they evaluate and going along with the recommendations and data that I provided. There's other customers that are a little bit more stubborn, and even though you might present scenarios that are very logical and you have a lot of documentation to back those up, they expect more money for their own reasons, whether they need more money or just feel their house is worth more money, or that's the price that a neighbor got for their home. But of course, the neighbor that they reference might have sold their home 2 or 3 years ago when the market was a lot stronger. And so that can really adversely impact a home. I'll give you a quick example. In my office, there's a home that came on the market about 35 days ago, and it's in a section of Hunters Creek that's a normal section. It's a typical 3-bedroom, 2-bath pool home. The home has been well maintained, but it doesn't have anything extraordinary about it. Pretty normal improvements or lack thereof. It's like the majority of homes that you see on the market. So this particular customer priced the home about $25,000 higher than the recommendation. And it's a home that's under $500,000, so it's kind of in that mid-level point now of pricing homes. And unfortunately, there was a lot of documentation to justify the price that my office recommended, but this particular customer was steadfast in that she wanted to try it at the higher price. So we explained the pitfalls of that strategy, and she was kind of time constrained, but she still wanted to go with that strategy. So to make a long story short, the home's activity during the first 4 weeks was well below what we should have had on it, even putting a house on the market during the holiday season. And so she wasted the busiest times. Usually when you put a new house on the market, the first 7 to 14 days are going to elicit the most activity on the home. So now we've gone through a price adjustment, and I think the house should sell hopefully sooner rather than later. But A, it's going to take longer to sell than it would have had it been priced based on a recommendation initially. And secondly, if it follows suit like a lot of other homes that follow this scenario, it may sell for less than it would have sold for had it been priced properly to begin with. And thirdly, she's going through additional stress now because of her time constraints. And one of the things that we try to do, besides successfully selling a house for the highest price that we think is fair, is trying to minimize the stress for folks. We try to lay out a blueprint, and we try to follow the blueprint. And we know that for a lot of people, selling their house can be very stressful. So we try to minimize that, and we take pride in making it an enjoyable experience. And unfortunately, with this particular customer, she's going to experience more of the stress than was necessary had she gone along with our recommendation. So that's just an example to kind of tie in all these things that I mentioned. Lastly, I'm going to go over, and this relates to both society and real estate, what I call integrity and honesty. And what do I mean by that? Well, one of the things that you hear me talk about all the time was that whatever I guarantee people, I try to make sure that I accomplish it and then some. I don't make any false promises. I don't do puffing on appointments. I tell people what I think it not only is accurate, but the things that I can definitely accomplish on their behalf. I don't say things that A, I don't believe in, and that B, I can't accomplish. I try to treat all customers the way I would treat a family member, or how I expect to be treated by somebody if I was in a consumer situation. So the couple examples I'm going to bring, one example came to mind because I was telling this new seller of mine this story when I was over at his house this morning, and we were chatting about different things. So there was a property that we were involved in about 10 years ago that one of my agents in my office had listed in the Hunters Creek area. And it went under contract quite rapidly. And the inspections went through fine. Everything was going along smoothly. Well, then it was a mortgage transaction, so they, of course, had an appraisal. And the appraisal came in quite low. So, I mean, it was a house under $500,000, and the appraisal came in about $35,000 below contract price. So that's a huge deviation in that price range. And this was in an established subdivision where there was plenty of comparable sales, so it wasn't like the appraiser had to be creative or anything. And so the agent came to me for my advice. And so I reviewed the written data they had, and I said, recommended, I said, let me take a look at the house for you. I said, get me a copy of the appraisal so I can take that with me. So anyway, the agent did that, and in short order, I got the appraisal, and I went over to the property. And this was an area that I sell a ton of houses in, so I know the houses quite well. And so I took a look inside. It was a vacant home. And I was maybe at the home for 30 seconds, took a look at the appraisal, and I could immediately tell that the appraisal was correct. The reason I could tell that and why there was such a deviation was this was a home that the county records had shown with about 2,300 feet of heated and cooled area. And the house prior to the agent in my office listing it had sold 5 times. And each time it sold, the data on the county records showed the 2,300 living area. And each transaction went through with a mortgage transaction. So that meant that each of these sales, in all likelihood, had a traditional appraisal, and none of them had a problem. The 6th sale, which was the agent from my office, came through at $35,000 below contract price. And when I compared the appraisal to the county records and what was on the MLS, there was about a 400-foot deviation. And I immediately could tell that the county records were wrong because I had been in this type of house many times, and I could tell it was a lot closer to a 1,900-foot house than a 2,300-foot house. You know, the thing is, you can't always get a firm idea of just eyeballing a house within, let's say, 50 feet, but I can definitely tell when there's a significant deviation like this 400-foot deviation. So I explained to the agent that the appraiser was correct and the appraisal value that they put on the house was in line with the findings. So because there was such a large deviation, the seller and buyer couldn't come to an agreement, so the house went back. The house would go back on the market. And so this seller, of course, was upset. He said, well, when I bought the house, I was told it was $2,300, and that's what I bought, and I expect to sell it as a 2,300-foot house. And I understood their position. However, I explained to the agent, you now know it's a much smaller house than it's shown in the county records, and it would be dishonest of you, unethical, and you could get also in legal trouble if you were to place it back on the market with the old square footage. Well, this particular seller insisted that the agent in my office put the house back on the market with the square footage that was shown in the county tax records. So I instructed the agent that you're not going to do that. You're going to have to tell the seller you're either going to list it at the proper square footage that the appraisal showed, or you can't take the listing. So, not surprisingly, this particular seller terminated the agent's services and hired a different company and a different agent. Well, I'll just say a couple of things. I'm not going to use names or company names. This was a big national company that they went with, one of the pretty big names in the industry. They went with a well-known agent who sells a lot of properties. So when the property went back on the market with the incorrect square footage that correlated to the county tax records, and I knew the agent personally, so I wrote the agent a very pleasant, professional email, and I said, hey, congratulations on your listing. FYI, you might want to do some more due diligence on this because I'm about 99% sure that what you're advertising is not what you're selling, that the square footage is way lower than what you're marketing the home at. So the agent never got back with me, never changed the square footage. It went under contract, and lo and behold, what happened? It closed. So it closed at the higher price with the incorrect square footage. Now you might say, well, how did that happen if the square footage was lower and it had sold 5 times before our transaction and now it's selling for a 6th time after our failed transaction? Well, there's one answer for that and one answer only. All 6 transactions that sold, none of the appraisers measured the house. They're supposed to measure the house, but unfortunately, a lot of appraisers take the easy way, and they just go with the county records. And in this particular situation, the county records were way incorrect. And this was a 2-story house, so sometimes you see mistakes on 2-story houses. And so all the people that have been buying this house were buying less house than they paid for. So what's the moral of that story? Well, the agent that ended up selling the house, in my opinion, had a lack of integrity or ethics, but was interested in making a sale. The seller, because the seller felt they had been wronged, they were going to do the strategy that helped their pocketbook and not worry about ethics. So they sold the house knowing that he owned less than he had. And the appraisers didn't do their job. They got paid their normal fee, but shortcutted their job. So they basically did a disservice to the new owner. And so nobody in this situation may ever get caught with this unethical, unprofessional behavior. But unfortunately, that's the way our society is. I mean, think about society right now. How many people tell mistruths, distort, lie, and I'll correlate that now a little bit indirectly, but I always like to bring our social fabric into these. Right now, there's been a continual publicity surge over the past years on the Epstein case, with the disgusting thing with the pedophilia and all that stuff that's gone on. And there's been a lot of high-profile people associated with Epstein. So a lot of information had been released lately. A lot of photography has been released of pictures of high-profile people. There's even been pictures of our president. There's been birthday cards of our president. They also had former President Clinton photographed with them. And anyway, long story short, the enforcement and the seeking of the truth has been erratic. Why do I mean that? Well, right now it's getting a lot of publicity, and what will continue to get publicity is that they're subpoenaing former President Clinton and Hillary Clinton to go before the Senate and Congress and have to testify under oath. You could argue whether that's justified or not, but interestingly, they're not doing that to President Trump, and there's probably more pictures and data that would affiliate him with Epstein, but yet he's not undergoing that type of questioning and scrutiny. And there's many other people in our government that are in different positions of high authority that were not required to do what they're making the Clintons do. So it's obvious they're doing this for political cachet to try to embarrass the Clintons and the Democrats. And it's another way to distract from what really went on. But that seems to be the prevalent way that we do business in the United States nowadays. And people just shrug their shoulders and say, oh, politics is a dirty business, and they're all liars, and they're all crooks. And that may or may not be true. I'm not going to give an editorial on the integrity of each politician. But we should have consistency and fairness, and we just don't. And the one other example I'll use, which is a little bit, it comes to heart with me. They had a triple murder in Kissimmee last week of 3 gentlemen that were on vacation, all around 70 years old, who were all murdered by the next door neighbor who had a history of criminal behavior and mental problems. And I won't go into all the aspects of our guns and mental incapabilities, etc. What I will say is, why was this gentleman out on the street? When he went before the judge and was found guilty, the judge's sentence was way lenient. Didn't make him get incarcerated, didn't make him go to a mental hospital for a long period of time. If he was insane and you didn't want to put him in a regular jail, he should have been incarcerated. So now he's gone out and murdered people. And I know the county prosecutor in Orange County is getting blamed for that. I don't know what her role in that is, but at the end of the day, the judge is the one that sentences these people. And how would you feel if you had 3 relatives that are here on vacation, minding their own business, and they just get murdered like that for somebody that shouldn't be out on the street? Well, again, at the very least, it's incompetence and inconsistency. But we just don't seem to have, there's a lot of illogic in our society right now. And again, if this person has a history of mental incapabilities, it's too easy to get guns also. So these are some things I want you to think at. I guess I'll finish off with, who do you believe? Well, the only thing I can tell you is, is what the person's telling you about any aspect. Is it logical? Do they have facts to back it up? And what is their track record? You should demand transparency, integrity, and facts in any aspect of business life. So that's all for today. Enjoy the weather. Call me if you want to see a great house at a great price. And this is Marty Kaiser out.